Next up, we have the CEO of Pieces, Savo Nat.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me here today. So just transparently, what I'd like to do is just tell you a story of how I got here, what we're trying to do, and especially as a very young person, why I decided to throw away my 20s to start a tech company here in Ohio. And so, really defining the why was the beginning of the journey for me. And I think, I was born into multiple, positions of enablement, right? I'm, well-abled. I have, great mental aptitude, intellect, born in America, which is a huge advantage, globally and things like that. And so I said, what am I going to do with my life, right? I've been given all these gifts. How do I actually turn those into something meaningful? And so, I knew right out of high school that, and I went to St. Xavier High School here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I knew that I wanted to be a man for and with others, and that's the motto of the high school. And I said, how do I live that out? I'm going off to college. And I knew that, I wanted to make something of impact to the world. And the question is, okay, what do you do? Well, you do what lots of people, have done, and that's start a company. And you're like, oh, okay, well, start a company. That's a great idea. Well, a company is a huge understatement. And so to get where you are to make that impact, you're going to be on a journey, starting multiple companies, pivoting, identifying when something is, kind of at its end and determining where to go next. And as my father always says, one thing will always lead to another thing. And so today I just want to tell you a brief story about my journey and some of the people out there that might be on their journey. You will overlap. So getting into it, right out of high school, I was like, all right, let's start a company. Couple of buddies, and I was a technology co-founder, and this was a language learning company. And so we started this, and at that moment in time, we had all kind of decided, hey, we're doing this. We raised money on it. We all ended up at different universities. And so timing and kind of chance is, a large part of the formula. So wrong place, wrong time. We all ended up at different universities. We were trying to make that happen, and it didn't quite work out. So, naturally, I'm in universities. I'm getting involved with other entrepreneurship programs, and I met another co-founder that I'm still working with today. His name is Mac Myers, and we just said, all right, let's solve a problem here at university. Let's go ahead and build Slack, if you will, for higher education. So we set off on this adventure with other developers, ourselves, and we said, let's build group chats for all your classes, clubs, dorms, teams that automatically self-assemble each semester. We just want to text our classmates without having everyone's phone numbers. So we're in the EDU space, and we're like, okay, let's go ahead and build this. We started building it with external developers and really quickly understood design, building this, making sure it operates, making sure it hits the level of expectation that the students were expecting, the university was expecting, was a massive undertaking, which we significantly underestimated. And so I think, identifying as a founder or even a co-founder when you've underestimated something is really important. So long story short, the stat is 9 out of 10 startups fail. Well, the first one, language learning startup, failed. The second one was a lot more difficult, but the learning curve built into this one, we decided to keep going on it. So we launched our first product, and fun fact, it fell really hard, flat on its face. And so, I was like, wow, this is going to be a lot harder than we had thought. And we sank a serious amount of money into it, a serious amount of time and effort, and it hit us, right? And so we said, okay, how do we respond, right? And the question is, with regards to that pivot, that response, that's up to you. And so long story short, I took it upon myself the last 2 years of college to rebuild this from the ground up. And, what that looks like is diving in deep. Yes, I was, computer science major, and I was doing entrepreneurship and design and things like that, but that does not qualify you to build a university-grade software product, right? And so you really start to learn this when you get into the weeds of it. So nevertheless, I graduated a year early from Miami University, and I said, this final year, I'm going to do literally nothing except write code for this platform. And that's exactly what I did. And so, I would code at night. And then, of course, during the day, I had internships. We were trying to build the team. And really, one of my goals has always been duplicate yourself as fast as possible. So I did that for a year straight. Write code, grow the team, invest in the team members, duplicate myself as much as possible. So, after the fact, the product was rebuilt from the ground up. And actually, one of the processes of that was my roommate and I, Brian Lambert, we had decided, okay, we're going to try and build this in a summer. We'll build proof of concept, see what happens. That worked out well. And so, dedicated my senior year to it and said, let's really try and make this happen. And so, although I had many allies at Miami University with regards to selling this, navigating kind of the requirements to build a product like this, it is still very difficult to raise money and sell to universities. Long sales cycle, ed tech is, difficult, etc. But what I did start to get good at is a solution to this classification of problems where you have a lot of data, and that data is moving very fast. So high volume, high velocity. And I happen to be doing this in a limited compute environment, such as a web browser. So we said, okay, we're going to make a pivot, and what can we take away from this company that we just started without total losses, right? Development framework, called Runtime. And so we said, how can we make something of Runtime? And also, how can we have an eye on the next pivot, which is, going to be the product inevitably to be built? And so we said, we have this great underlying technology capability. It's a high-performance development framework. What are we going to build next? And so we kind of just sat down. Everyone looked around the room. We said, let's not focus on how people are communicating, aka email, these chat apps, things like that. But let's focus on what people are communicating. And to the day, really, that's one of two things. That's a message or an entire file. And as a creative, as a developer, as a designer, there's so many things in between those two kind of materials. And these are called file fragments. So in between Mesh My Campus, which is the first company, and Pieces, which is the current company I'll get into shortly, we partnered with a company called UltraEdit. And we wanted to identify a file fragment that would bring great value to the UltraEdit consumers. And this was a configuration file fragment. And so we built a product in between called CloudSync. And all CloudSync did was effectively take a file fragment out of UltraEdit, send it up to the cloud, and re-inject it on another side so you have the same configuration on multiple computers. And we said, okay, this worked out. We turned a profit on that. That was really great. But how can we do this for literally everything on the operating system, all the pieces that you interact with daily? And so, we said, what is a piece? Well, quite simply, a piece is something you might copy onto your clipboard. So if you're a designer, it's artboards, layers, color palettes, blends. If you're an animator, it's a frame or a transition. If you're a developer, it's a code snippet or a stack trace. And then, it goes on and on and on. And in a very simple term, if you're building a PowerPoint, you copy a slide, you have a file fragment on your clipboard. So we said, how do we stabilize these things, send them over the wire, and bring them back? So we got into it, and with the last budget really left over from Mesh My Campus, Runtime, and CloudSync, we said, let's build a proof of concept on these file fragments, stabilizing them, enriching them, making them shareable, searchable, savable, and re-injectable. And so we did that. We dumped all of our money, remaining money, into this work, and we said, okay, we can do this. It worked out. Let's go ahead and build a company called Pieces around file fragments. And so, you start to see over this journey, you have these natural evolutions of dealing with data, building a really large team, identifying okay, we've put enough resources into this, it's time to pivot, or it's not working, and really being honest with yourself. And so they say 9 out of 10 startups fail. And that's, if you define that, that's a startup, which is a idea that fails. But if you take it upon yourself as a founder or as a founding engineer or a co-founder, you can actually significantly increase those odds. Because for an individual, if they try again and try again and try again, you will hit that natural evolution, and something will, hit the intersection of timing and just right place, right time, to where something like Pieces can really take off. And so, I think that the law of large numbers that's really at work is think large and like just keep being at bat. And then also, you know, the other thing too is, especially in our space, when we're pioneering kind of file fragments and Internet of Native applications, these are really, really hard problems, right? And so I think the assumption should be, if you're a founder on this journey, that it is possible and there's not a problem that hasn't been solved out there. We will continue to have these problems solved. We'll continue to push the ball forward. And that's really important to hold true. And at the end of the day, you know, it's all about making an impact, you know, in the world. And so my naive self in high school is like, oh, okay, start a company, get really wealthy, and then do something, you know, like recycling or whatever it is. And that's actually a falsity. I think one of the things that I've determined now is it's start a company and learn how to design an organization, build a team that is authentically connected and centered around solving a really difficult problem, and the economics will follow. The team will continue to snowball, and these hard problems will get solved, and eventually you will have a really great impact in your lifetime. And I think, you know, the problems that are upon us in this century, you know, economical problems, social problems, environmental problems, the whole 9 yards. Generally, as a founder, you're specializing in solving hard problems and persisting and trying again and again and again. That's what we're doing now, and it's a great muscle to build, and I would recommend everyone do it. The journey doesn't stop. So, yeah, thank you for hearing that little blurb of what I did, and, yeah, hopefully you took something from it.
So I only got fragments of what you said. No, I'm just
kidding. No, that's great. Love that. That's perfect.
But as you're thinking about, you mentioned, and lots of people have mentioned, kind of building that right team, and that's a theme that continues to come up today. And it seems to be a reflection that a lot of people are having. So when you think about building the right team, how do you know when you find the right person, for one, and then how do you know how to relinquish some of the control? Because I know that for me personally, that has been a challenge. If I bring someone else in, sometimes I have to remind myself to get out of their way because they're doing things maybe not exactly how I would have done them. So what is your experience with that, Ben?
I hold true that my job is to work for my team, and my job is to duplicate myself as fast as I possibly can. You know, an individual will only scale so far, and you have so many things going against you. You have time, you have your health, you have just right place, wrong time, you know, et cetera, so many variables. So if you duplicate yourself as fast as you can, and you hold that true as your core mission, people will understand that you're investing in them. And the right team members are the team members that identify when you're making an investment in them, and they consciously decide to make an investment back in you. And if you hold that true, now you're thinking in terms of we, and you can solve a lot of really hard problems.
Definitely. Speaking of hard problems, as you think of scale and what that looks like for you to continue to grow when you go from one company to two company to whatever's next, what's your biggest fear with scale?
My biggest fear is that you hit a scale, but the pillars that hold up that scale are limited. I want to create a solid amount of pillars, so if one fails, you have many holding it up. And I think that that's a really important thing is, you know, building a really solid structure with many foundational points, because the reality is several will fail. And I think, you know, at scale, you want to achieve scale with these pillars in place. And that doesn't start with you, it starts with the team and we.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Savo.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.
Great.
Savo mentioned that he is wasting his 20s building this company. I definitely wasted my 20s doing lots of other things that were not as productive. So congratulations to Savo for productive waste of time.